Good evening, and thank you all for joining us for our True Talk Thursday podcast, the platform that encourages a thought-provoking conversation about topics centered around education. What's so neat about this podcast is that you'll hear opinions, experiences, research, and ideas from various perspectives. But I want to remind you all that the views and opinions expressed tonight do not necessarily reflect that of Alas. And so I will now turn to Maria Armstrong, who is Executive Director of Alas, to drive the conversation tonight. Thank you all for joining.
Thanks, Francois. Yeah, and you know what? We should put in there, and they aren't the sole expression of IEL too.
we better protect our organization just in case.
That's right. That's why we say that blurb. Hey, Jose, you know what? Thank you so much for coming on tonight.
For sure.
The attire, I've got to tell you, you've got to put that up against the screen.
I like that.
That's
the mindset. You got to put the mindset on it.
You got it.
And then we got to know who got our back.
Exactly.
So is the time, right? all this anger and frustration and confusion. We got to know who's in control.
That's right. And we keep tossing out the love. That's what it's all about.
That's right.
And when you can get 3 loves from Maria, that's saying something. So, hey, tonight we're going to be talking about, we're turning the corner because this is, new year. And last week we had a podcast that really spoke about reflection, and we had Anthony Kim on from Education Elements, and he was able to share some predictions and all that. And, I started thinking about during that reflection time too, we just came out of, a different kind of year, but it was also census year. And that led me to thinking about, well, if it's a census year, we've been talking all about the inequities in education, of course, but it brought me to think about zip codes. And, this whole issue of inequities was not a surprise to any of us, especially not me and you. And so we've been talking about inequities throughout our careers. And exactly. And it's one of those things where, the light's shining on it, but zip codes have been a great divide, amongst our communities. So can you talk to us a little bit before we get into, census, zip codes, funding, before we get into that, can you tell us a little bit about what it's like being the chief, CEO / director / almighty IEL guru?
No,
there you go.
You know what? I'm just a servant. I'm a kid from the South Side of Chicago, raised by a single mom, and just blessed and fortunate to be in a role through a lot of community engagement that communities raised me. And it's just part of my way of paying it forward to them as being in a role like this. So how I see my role in IEL, we have networks from superintendents to people in family engagement to folks in neighborhoods. We call it community schools. You name it, work with youth with disabilities and those youth who are disconnected. So being in this role is just a blessing, and just to have an opportunity to pay it forward, but really to actually, so I'm a director for the Coalition of Community Schools. And so how I take that is that it's my role to really use the vehicle of all the relationships we have, which Maria is a steering committee of ours representing Alas. It's really our way of how do we actually use a school to be the center point of creating a flourishing community where people actually feel like they belong, and they people actually work together. And then everybody comes up and develops some compassion and give back. So it's my role in IEL is to help create that, use these build relationships, build community, and do more than lift community voice, but actually activate leadership.
Yeah, because I was going to say, everything that I've been able to sit in on and listen to, it is, the coalition's truly action oriented. And it that's why I was wondering about, the work that has been done, in spite of zip code, I guess I should probably put it in that way, has really served that the school has become the hub of that community.
Yes, ma'am.
And so when you talk about from family engagement all the way up to the soup, the community at large, which wraps around its services for our, like you said, our most marginalized and just, students in general, but primarily these community schools, do you find that they are out of the ashes, if you will, within the communities that probably you and I both came from?
Yeah. Yeah. Are you asking, are they mainly in those places? Well, yeah, because those are typically the most marginalized communities.
Yep.
But they're also, if you think about it, sometimes the most disconnected resource-wise communities. I mean, people come in there with the savior mentality and say, here's a bucket of money, we're going to make you well. But they don't tend to listen and pull people together to say, okay, this is what we want to do with our money. If it was my family money, I was always in control of my family budget. And so I got a chance to participate in that. But what we do, we take federal money, we take state money, we take philanthropic money, we take local money and say, let's say, go do to those people. But from a community school, let's say, let's do with people. Here's some resources we have. Let's create together. Let's develop together. Let's rise up together. So I live in the 505 now, Albuquerque, New Mexico, for those folks. If I say 87105 for anybody from New Mexico on this call right now or listening in on this vodcast right now, you're going to go, ooh, man, you don't want to go down there. How can I determine that from a zip code? Why should a zip code tell me where I should be able to travel in a city or a county? Why would I have that type of reaction from a zip code? So a community school is looking to break down that barrier, ready to demystify the zip code, ready to flip zips, if I could say that, and turn people up turn the paradigm upside down.
Exactly.
So sorry, I'm a little passionate about that.
No, as you should. That's why you're leading this charge. So like you said, the money's, the bucket, you fill the bucket with from wherever you can, get it, and it comes into these communities and working shoulder to shoulder with them. Can you talk a little bit about how that funding has transpired to maybe even innovation and do things from a way that has never been seen and is still thriving?
Yes. So I'll tell you one thing. We got a bucket of funding at one community school. That school had a 91% student mobility rate. Anybody ever try and teach you that? I don't care what curriculum you throw at it. You can't hit a moving target. You can't teach children who are moving all the time. It doesn't matter. So with a small amount of resources, there's some funding that paid for a person whose role was it just to convene people and talk about how do we work this out. Short story, within 3 years of working with parents who were shocked, this is predominantly Spanish-speaking community, shocked that they were actually engaged in the decision-making process, not the assessment of what I need.
Not the input, hey, a survey.
Right.
Yeah.
Not a survey, not a focus group. No, we want you at the table. And they started designing their own future. Not only in 3 years, they went from 91% to 38% student mobility, but some of the most innovative ideas began to get implemented in regards to breaking down institutional barriers to housing problems. That started back in 2014, which led up to even this year, grew from like 6 parents to now across a entire hub within the zip code of schools that partner together. That even this past year in COVID led to them coming together and pulling together the US members of Congress and talk about, let's go one step above than what they're doing with stimulus or with the last package that they had.
Right.
We don't even want cases to go to court. We don't want cases to even be written up because all it's going to do is create a backlog.
You got it.
That community designed that back then, and they continue to design and evolve. But guess what? The principal changed, teachers change, providers change. You know who remains the same? The people in the community.
That's right.
So they have to be the ones to design it. Whatever the resource is, we have to be the ones to be nimble with our resources and be willing to listen and participate in the design. I'm not saying detach from ourselves from that, because we know some stuff too. But they're living it.
That's right. They stay in the community. Many of us, we leave, we go home, right?
We leave.
That's right.
We get better.
Yeah.
So that's one thing to a community school too. When we talk about flipping zips, is many times I grew up, I'm guilty of it. So I'm guilty of it. You know, I'm gonna go to school, I'm gonna get my degree, or I'm gonna play ball. I just happen to be able to do both. And I'm gonna get out of here.
I heard a little bit about that. You played a little ball. What ball were you tossing around?
Football, had the little pill, played a little football. I played in college and had a chance. The reason you only heard a little bit about it, because I only got a little bit of playing time in the pros.
So who'd you play for?
I got a short stint in San Diego Chargers, got a short stint in Canada. It's like a traveling salesman, but I'm fortunate enough to be one of the few.
That's awesome. That's
so
awesome.
I got a chance to be on that 1%, not the 1% billionaires, but the 1% from high schoolers who actually make it. Yeah.
But didn't that help? And the reason I bring that in, not just to say yay, woo,
Right.
and we'll talk about the Chargers in a little bit, but to be able to say, you know, that perspective, like you said, there's some of us who were able, however we were able to, because we all have different, you know, stories and pathways of how we were able to get it out. It's what we do now with that passion of how we're able to, we know what it was like there. And so it's not enough just to show up, right?
That's right.
It's not enough. You know,
community school maybe be my job, you know, what I get paid to do, but it was community that brought me to where I am.
Yeah.
My mom was a single mom. It was the Merriweathers, it was the Johnsons, it was the Hills. You know, I can name the families who were there for me. My mom, I can't remember a day when she wasn't there for me, but I knew she worked 2 jobs.
Yeah.
So she had to be not there, but she's a great mom. I'm at her house right now. You see the peach walls and peach ceilings.
You sure that's not your man cave?
Right? I did paint it. I still have remnants on my clothing from the paint job. But it was really the community and irony. Here's some irony. So I had a chance to go back to the south side of Chicago and go visit. The elementary school 2 blocks away from the home I grew up in is now Higgins Community Academy. It wasn't that back then.
No.
Yeah. So
and that's something. That's something. Yeah. I love that. Love that story. So, you know, when you think about that, it takes a little bit of time to turn quote a regular school or traditional school. In what are some of those first steps in being able to transform into a community school? Like it sounds like it takes a little bit of time and a lot of work. So what would be like that first step to even say, you know what, this would be a great place for a community school?
Yeah, you know, so when you say great place, and we talk about zip codes, I mentioned the A7, one of the zip codes here in Albuquerque, the A7105, which happens to be the highest referring zip code to our adult and juvenile detention center. And so that gives a negative perception of that community. But if you actually go down in that community, you'll know that its perception and some of those arrests are justified. I can say that personally because before community schools, I did juvenile justice reform. I actually worked in the detention center, so I can tell you the data behind that.
Yeah.
So one of the first things that the easy and the hard thing to do about community schools is it doesn't take anybody's permission, but it does take somebody's effort, and so you have to have the effort and be willing to lead through listening. Yet, as if you're a principal, or if you're a superintendent, want to do this across a school district, it's on what I call, it's like you have to be willing to lose your leadership, which means that you have to listen so much and be willing to act upon quickly what people say, not assess 1 year and do something the next year. Because I mentioned some of these places, people aren't going to be there the next year.
Yeah.
So your data is already outdated.
That's right.
The data is already outdated. So one of the things is just begin to bring people in the masses together, and regardless of how many it is, begin to start and continue the table. One in Indiana, I'm forgetting the school district right now, just talking to them yesterday. The gray hair is popping out and affecting my brain. The gray hairs are growing. Anyway.
How about if we do this? How about if we take a quick break?
Yeah.
And then you can think about that, because I do want to continue to talk about how we, like, what are those steps, and like you said, what is a great place to be able to create a community school. So we're going to hang on right now and take a quick break.
Hey there, and don't forget, if you like what you hear and want to gain some more insight into what school districts are facing now, then tune in every Thursday at 7 p.m. or subscribe below. We thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Have a great night.